Can you hear me? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. We're excited to have everyone here today. It's a great crowd and a great topic that we're all very passionate about. We have a lot of guests today, so I'm not going to say everyone's name, but we'd love to have the guests to join us in Southlake Executive Forum. We meet every month, and we always have great topics like this. This is kind of like an old homeschool week with this topic, because 25 years ago when Southlake started, it was to bring topics to the community and to the residents and people that had businesses in Southlake to let them know what was going on in the community. Because at that time we were growing so fast and things were happening that it was hard to keep up with, that Southlake Executive Forum was formed to be able to provide a resource of information to people. And so that's what we're doing again today. So it's nice to circle back around to our original roots. So today's a great topic, and Mark Jones is going to be leading as a moderator. So Mark, if you can come on up.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us here today at the Southlake Executive Forum breakfast. Let me start off first by thanking Mike Hutchison and the Hilton for the great job that they always do. It's first-class facilities and service, and Mike, thank you for everything you do for us. Okay, right, right up front, Mike. You can have mine. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Our topic of discussion today addresses the development, the proposed development within Southlake Town Center. This project that started in the late 90s quickly became the city's center and the heart of all things that are Southlake. As you know, it includes city offices, the library, the DPS office, over 100 retail stores, close to 30 restaurants, Harkins Theater, single-family development, and of course the Hutchison Hilton, just to name a few. The vision that has been shared by the developing company, Cooper & Stebbins, and the leaders of the city of Southlake have culminated in a first-class project that's the envy of most cities our size and many growing communities. But it took the cooperation of all involved over those years to develop what you see currently. And it's in that spirit of cooperation that we're here today to discuss what the future might hold. So, for rules of engagement, today's meeting is being videotaped and should be available later in the near future. Each speaker will have 5 minutes to present an opening statement. When the speaker has 30 seconds remaining, a warning sign will be raised to let you know that you need to be wrapping up your comments, and Mary Grace has that sign. If you go past your allotted 5 minutes, a gong will be vigorously sounded, letting you know that your time is up. After opening remarks, each speaker will have 2.5 minutes to respond to each question that will be presented. And again, a warning sign will be raised at 30 seconds remaining for your presentation. If you exceed that time, you will be gonged. All right, today our speakers are Frank Bliss, who is principal and president of Cooper and Company, along with Al Zito, who's a former city councilman and a community leader, who will discuss the town square development issue from different perspectives. And let me introduce each one. Frank Bliss is the president of Cooper & Stebbins Company, part of Cooper & Company group of companies that offices in Texas, California, and New Zealand. Frank began traveling with Brian Stebbins to Southlake in 1995 to help the company start up Southlake Town Square, which is a 130-acre master-planned mixed-use downtown development. Frank's focus remains on the completion of Southlake Town Square master plan. Al Zito. Al has been a resident of Southlake since 2004. He served the Southlake City Council from 2010 to 2013. And during a tenure on council, also served as a member of the Audit Committee, Secretary of Southlake Parks and Recreation Development Corp., member of the Southlake 2030 Plan, and member of Teen Court Board of Directors. Al also served on the Board of Directors for the Bob Jones Nature Center for 5 years. He is a former president and CEO of an aviation company that he founded in 2000 and successfully developed until acquisition by a private equity group in 2017 when he retired, or at least semi-retired. Al has continued to be actively involved in local, state, and national politics, assisting with campaigns and testifying before multiple Texas State Senate and House committees on a variety of issues. Al currently sits on the Carroll ISD Budget and Finance Committee and has taken leadership position on the issues of property tax reform and relief within the state of Texas and opposing high-density development within Southlake. So, ask our members to come forward. We've got opening remarks, and again, we have 5 minutes for each opening, and why don't we start with Mr. Bliss? Why don't we get you started with 5 minutes, please?
Thanks, Mark, and good morning. Really good to see this packed house. My family and I are 22-year residents of Southlake. Like you and my neighbor Al, we've actively participated in the community to secure and strengthen the Southlake that we all love. We've watched our children grow up here. We've seen Southlake become the highly desirable, close-knit community with its elite school district and the economic engine that we enjoy today. What makes Southlake uniquely Southlake are the people that comprise our community. However, we have active and valuable members who are leaving because we don't have housing options for them. Am I right, Rick? There is a social cost to the community when we lose or fail to attract these residents, and an economic cost that comes with the loss of their spending power and their investment in our community. We are offering the downtown residences to provide Southlake residents an option which enables them to stay here longer, adding to our economic vitality and strengthening our community. Most of us know residents who either through divorce or death of a loved one have been forced to leave. Many others have parents or in-laws who would have liked to have moved to Southlake to be part of their kids' and their grandkids' lives on a more regular basis, but found nothing here that fit their lifestyle. Additionally, there are thousands of baby boomers like me, and I think Al's a younger baby boomer, who are part of the silver tsunami. For those of you that don't know, there's 10,000 of us a day turning the age of 65. While many baby boomers still prefer to own, I think Steve Shrum is still one of those, more and more are giving up home ownership for the freedom that comes with renting. But what we want is something that fits the lifestyle we enjoyed as homeowners, which is what is fueling the luxury rental building boom that is behind this discussion today. Many of those who left Southlake got to a point where they no longer could or wanted to justify owning and maintaining a large home on a large lot. When we lose these residences, we weaken and often lose our ties to them. They move to another community where, guess what? They get plugged in just like they were plugged in here. We would like to change this outcome, but what options do we have to give them? By the way, this is not just a community issue. This is also a town square issue. More affluent folks who support our local businesses are needed to sustain and build the economic vitality of Town Square, which is our economic engine. The downtown residences will retain and attract residents with high incomes and net worth who want a luxury lifestyle where they live in our walkable downtown. When we started Town Square, mixed use was a somewhat new phenomenon, typically anchored by retail. Over the years, competition has grown. The shops at Legacy, University Park Village, and others now compete within our trade area. Within Southlake, we have hundreds of thousands of square feet of retail that did not exist when we opened in 1999, including the shops of Southlake, Park Village, and Carroll Point. Those are just the ones you can walk to from right here. Competition is getting tougher every day. Fueled by DFW's continued growth, new developments are sprouting up around us like Legacy West and the shops at Clear Fork. But unlike yesterday's retail-dominated environment, these new developments are incorporating a large percentage of multifamily and other residential uses. Why are we seeing this change? because it is precisely what today's retailers, restaurants, office, and other commercial users want. It is the key to their success. More and more, it's also what residents are demanding: live, work, play. These are the newer, smarter ways to live, and they are better for everybody's bottom line. Leasing agents from other projects frequently try to recruit town square tenants. 10 years ago, that wasn't as much of a problem because we had such a critical mass that we were somewhat immune to people trying to poach and bring them somewhere else. But today we face a weakness, which is the lack of a stronger residential program, and our tenants are starting to listen to other projects. If we do not remedy this, we are vulnerable to new developments that will attract our tenants to relocate to more balanced mixed-use environments somewhere else. And as we risk losing our residents, so too do we risk losing our businesses. Al may tell you that rather than downtown residences, we need more commercial development or less density consistent with the land's current zoning. And I would agree with Al that this is consistent with business as usual, which is a formula that has served Southlake well in the past. But we are in a new time, and we have a choice to make whether to keep up with the times or take the risk of becoming yesterday's news. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Let me ask Mr. Zito to come to the podium.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you very much, Frank. It's good to see you today, and I'm happy to have this conversation with you, or continue this conversation. Good morning again, everybody. We all have quite a vested interest in what's happening here, not just in Town Square, but in what's left for the development in our city. We're getting very close to our final build-out of our open land. We have about 1,200 acres left in the whole city to develop, both commercially and residentially. We need to remember that Southlake did not happen by accident. It happened with very careful planning, very careful foresight from our city forefathers that has led us to who and what we are today. Not just Town Square, but the whole city. While Town Square is absolutely a wonderful addition, and as we've even defined it, the crown jewel of our city, the crown jewel it needs some help, and we need to be sure that we're moving forward in a way that's going to ensure vitality and sustainability of Town Square far into the future. Whether it's because of choice or not that we move away, or age, or whatever may have you, but far into the future for our children and our children's children. Southlake has always been positioned geographically to succeed. It's not by accident that we are who and what we are. Proximity to a major airport, the two major roads, it was ours to make and flourish, or not. We have surrounding towns that wish they were Southlake, some that touch us directly, some that have tried their own town squares with residential elements, by the way, and have failed. We need to be smarter than that. We need to be on the cutting edge of what will tomorrow be. One of our main parameters that was set up early by our founding fathers, and I'm going to call them that, Pam, our founding fathers and mothers, as it may be, was of the city, was that Southlake what did Southlake want to be when it grew up? It was decided to be a low density, low intensity city with a maximum build out population of about 34,000 people. Yes, there were discussions back when there was 45,000, 55,000, 65,000 people potential build out for Southlake. Imagine Southlake if we've taken that path, 65,000 people. Not a place I probably would want to live, and I don't want to speak for you, but maybe not a place that you'd want to live as well. As we have these discussions today, I'd like you to remember what brought you to Southlake to begin with. The low-density housing, the fantastic, unbelievable, award-winning school system, our town square, our parks, and then ask, why do you stay here? Why do you stay here? Yes, there's also the neighbor and the relationship element as well, because Yes, there's a lot of brick and mortar in Southlake, whether it's town square or our homes, but what makes a community? We make a community. The people make a community. I find myself challenged that, and I'm a little emotional about this actually, Southlake is very special. And we all need to take a responsibility to keep it that way. It's, there's pressures that are on our developers, on us as homeowners and residents. Property taxes going up, land value going up, the price of dirt as it may be is way more expensive than it was 5, 10, 20 years ago. So the development opportunities become more and more challenging to do. So it's important that as we have this discussion today, some of it may get a little lively, but I promise that we'll all be respectful with my good friend who I respect tremendously, Frank Bliss. I know that he has in his heart what he believes is right for Southlake. Oh, I'm going to get the gong. I can't wait. I'm going to do it on the opening. This is perfect. So I do speak for many Southlakens that have spoken very clearly in regards to this issue, that the opinion is clear. Enough of the high density. They don't want it. They do not want the downside effects of having any more of it in our fine city. And if I speak another moment or 2, 3, 4, yes! Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Al. There you go. The gong works. Nicely done. Okay, let's go ahead and get into our questions here. The questions have been provided to each of the speakers, and so we, in an effort to prepare and give the appropriate responses and to, of course, avoid any surprises. The first question we have is related to the proposed project and how that fits into the vision of the original development plan and the 2035 plan, and how will additional residential units affect the city's plan for total population build out. So how does the proposed project fit into the vision of the original development plan and the 2035 plan, and how will additional residential units affect the city's plan for total population build out? Who would like to go first?
Okay, I'll go.
Perfect.
To us, the downtown residences are a perfect fit for Town Square and have been from the beginning. If anybody in this audience who was Johnson Elementary in 1996 and heard Brian speak, he talked about, to a question that was asked, what goes into a downtown? Retail, restaurants, all of that was met with quite applause and smiles. But when Brian said apartments, condos, and townhomes, the room just got quiet. And we were told very clearly after that meeting that if we needed multifamily and residential uses in Town Square to succeed, we needed to go back to California. So Brian and I made commitments to the city. We would start with the commercial piece of Town Square, and we would come back when the community could see the quality and everything that we were bringing, and we hoped that we could have a better conversation. And we did, and we've continued to come back since 2002 with the Brownstones, the Garden District, and now the Parkview residences. But the city has also worked with us during this period. This has not just been us trying to knock on a door. The city's 2035 land use plan has the overlay for this block as Town Square District. The current zoning on this block is C3 general commercial, but the land use overlay says it really should be downtown, which makes sense. It's part of Town Square. Under that district designation, a mix of uses, including residential, is encouraged. And there's a land use mix table that gives you the guidelines. So for the Town Square District, up to 15% of the acreage should be in residential uses, with an additional allowance of an additional 15% subject to site-specific considerations. Today, after 17 years of trying, we've got 7% of Town Square under residential uses, and it's taken us 17 years to get to that point. If we add the downtown residences, we'll be at 13%. We're still not to the minimum. So to me, it's consistent with our vision, it's consistent with the city's vision, it's consistent with the DT Downtown District zoning, which says it's to encourage the creation of a pedestrian-oriented mixed-use urban environment, which includes residential. So.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Al?
The 15% residential that was added into the land plan took place back in 2005, August of 2005. Coincidentally, that was as a accommodation for the then approved Brownstone project, which, as we all know, never saw full completion and changed into other things, the Garden District, et cetera. The latter two, as we know, are still under construction. I think the Parkview Residences is the last one by the garage, right, Frank? Thank you. Further, the land use plan, currently the 2035 plan, is a high view, and it's not regulatory, meaning that it's not a right that authorizes that particular thing to happen within the city. Zoning does that. And the view of the land use plan, as it may be in the 2035 plan, is expansive. The city goes through this process every 5 years, if I recall correct, to update it to latest standards. And it's not just land use, it's a whole bunch of different things around the city of how have things changed, how have things moved forward, and what do we have to tweak a little bit to make it a little bit better. So basically the answers for this is that it was never approved or expressed or implied to have a 15% high density residential element in town square. So the original concept plan for town square, in fact, it was expressly forbidden. It was not allowed. There was a lot of strong conversations, as I know Frank remembers. The developer did come back time after time asking for additional high density, and the city was amenable to those type of projects, the Brownstones being the first one. As far as how the additional high-density residential will affect the city's plan, our fine city's been carefully master planned, as we discussed a few minutes ago, to 34,000 people. We're closing in on that number now with a current population of, I think, around 31,000. Any increase, and this is critical, any increase to our total build-out will have derogatory effects on our city and school infrastructure and will require more manpower and more stuff. So simply said, Southlake was not planned to have high-density residential from the start. Streets, water, sewer, et cetera, and I'm not going to get gonged again.
All right.
I tried not to on that one.
Thank you. Okay, in that vein, just hold the mic there,
Sure.
Al, we'll come back to you. In that vein, you've both mentioned the term high density, and that could also mean to a lot of people apartments, condos, townhomes. There's several different descriptors that may fall into high density. Give us your thoughts on what does that mean to you? Please, Al, go ahead.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
High density residential is high density residential. Call it whatever you want, apartments, lofts, condos, townhouses, brownstones, whatever, it's all high density residential. And by design, it's meant to house many people in a compressed area. Simple as that. This is not Southlake. It was never in the plan for Southlake to have this type of residential product, and frankly, we already have enough of it in Southlake, especially in Town Square. We have some already alternative places to go. People may not know this. We have the villas in Tiburon. We have the community, I forgot the name of it real quick, that's on the northern side of town. We have Watermere. So there are some options already. And many of those options, if we look, have availability almost any time that you want to have something or want to see something to move to if you want to downsize. Oh, including, can't forget this, the wonderful brownstones and other areas that are within our beautiful town square. Did not get going.
There you go.
Very good. You know, I think a lot of times people use words like high density to describe things that they think they're not going to like or that they're afraid of for reasons that sometimes they can't even enunciate. When we talked about Town Square, it actually started for many people with the conversation about density. You may remember some of the calls the city got when we started building our first buildings. They're like, oh my God, you remember, Pam, They're right up on the road. They're right up on the streets. We've never seen this kind of building. It's going to be terrible. But then the brick went on and the windows went in, and all of a sudden we realized, whoa, this is a downtown. Make no mistake about it, Southlake Town Square is all about density. It's density by design. If you don't have Town Square built with high density, you don't have walkable streets, you don't have a downtown, you don't have the community that we've created here. So for the residential piece of Southlake Town Square, not a shocker, it's going to be high density. The Parkview Residences, 36 luxury condominiums with an average sale price of over $1.2 million, occupy a site with a density of 60 units to the acre. Oh my God. Is that really so bad? And by the way, most of our residents have Southlake roots. This is exactly what we're talking about. Density is not the issue. It's our community, it's how we live that is the issue. And using terms like high density and apartments and condos really mask the real issue, which is what is the quality in the built environment? How do we live? And for us, it's always been about those issues. It's always been about delivering the highest level of quality, delivering quality in the built environment, delivering experiential places. And I think that's what we are all benefiting from today, and that's what we want to continue here at Town Square.
Okay, thank you. The question next is, does Southlake lack diversity in housing? And would this project fill a void? Who do you see as the potential tenants and users of this project? Frank, since you have the mic, let's go.
I got the mic, I'll start. Yes, the short answer, does Southlake lack diversity in housing? Yes, I think the answer is pretty clear. I've seen surveys where people have responded to the city and said, we need more housing choices. The Mayor's Alliance for Unity and Culture, the school district's District Diversity Council, both testify to the fact that we do have diversity issues and ongoing conversations, which is a good thing. What void does it fill? I've talked to that in my opening remarks. We are losing so many people from empty nesters, baby boomers, seniors, divorcees, widowers, and not to mention corporate execs, people who travel extensively, people whose kids are grown and gone. I'm one of them. I'm so happy they've launched. And at some point, we may have a place in Colorado, Florida, California. We're looking at it, but we don't want to give up our roots here. We still want to be part of Southlake. But if I'm here 6 months out of the year, 9 months out of the year, do I really want to own and maintain a house? I'm not sure that I do. But I don't want the city telling me, sorry, it's time for you to leave. That, to me, is the wrong message to deliver to a community that wants to stay together.
Thank you. Al, same question.
As mentioned a few minutes ago, Southlake already has a diversity of housing. We have the villas in Tiburon, Tuscan Ridge, Watermere, and again, the Brownstones and Garden District Parkview residences in Town Square, as well as my understanding is upcoming condos that have been approved for the Caroline area. There's usually availability on the market, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, of these types of properties. So currently the demand is not close to exceeding the supply. May that change in the future? Very well may. Real estate is a fickle business. There's going to be a continued migration in Southlake. It's natural. It really is natural. People will downsize within Southlake. People will move out for various reasons. And as we know, people will be very eager to move in because of the many reasons to make Southlake so desirable to call home. As far as renting versus owning, again, there's rental of properties within Southlake. Maybe they're homes, maybe they're whatever they are, and the surrounding area. If for whatever reason people would like to rent and not purchase in Southlake, they can do that today. They can do it today. From what multiple realtors have told me, there is a demand for rentals. There's people that want to downsize. There's people that are remodeling their homes. There's people that are relocating here and haven't found a house yet and or are building a home. All need for temporary housing, as it may be, before they decide to move on to their next step. We all need to remember, Southlake is not an entry-level community. We are a community that people aspire to grow to achieve. We are not. We don't have enough room, to put it mildly, but we don't have the need to have a complete diversification of housing that, that fits all needs, including entry level, et cetera. We're a community that people, again, I'll say, aspire to live in. We need to keep it that way. We need to be that desirable jewel that say, I want to live in Southlake because. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next question. As presently presented, there are approximately 350 units that each average 1,000 square feet in size, with anticipated rents of $3,000 per month and 2 parking spaces per unit. Talk about the impact that number of units will have on traffic within Town Square development, and is there a plan that addresses the parking needs for these units? Al?
Well, I can only answer part of that, and mostly Frank will answer the plan. But from my perspective, from my spouse's perspective, from Phyllis, my better half by far, we have heard time and time again that we already have an issue in Town Square with congestion and parking and so on and so forth. I know Frank will say otherwise, and I understand why he will, because there's usually room in the city-owned and maintained parking garages that usually have space. But admittedly, most people don't like parking in those parking garages. It takes away from the quaintness and the attractiveness of Town Square. While an absolute necessity, we need the additional capacity that those parking garages have, and probably other innovative parking solutions in the future. It's that secret sauce that makes Town Square so special, is that quaintness. Pull up in your car, walk around, shop, eat, watch children playing in the parks, which I know I love to do, and I know that dearly departed Brian loved doing, looking at his window, as we remember speaking about picking that piece of art that's looking directly at his office. It's right out of a Norman Rockwell painting. I mean, wow, Southlake, wow. High-density residential will only put additional stress on an already difficult situation. Further, with limited parking at the proposed apartments, where do you think the residents will park their extra vehicle? Yep, in the taxpayer-funded city parking garages. Southlake residents shouldn't be subsidizing the parking requirements of high-density residential units in Town Square. It's a shopping destination, and destination, I'm going to talk about that a few times. Destination. What makes Town Square a destination? Destination that people in the region want to come to, want to visit, want to patronize our stores and our restaurants, want to be entertained. That's key. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Frank.
So much I want to respond to here. Let's just start with traffic. If you study projects around the country, and we get visits from people who have lived in other parts of the country, Country Club Plaza and other great places, and you look at Town Square, one of the things that developers, residents, visitors remark on is how absolutely efficient the Town Square plan is, how many ways there are to get in and out, and how well the traffic flows. That doesn't mean you're not going to have the holiday season when things get tighter, but for the most part, this place works very well. What's interesting, though, is go back to what Al mentioned about when we started Southlake Town Square. The city said, strip all the residential uses out, right? So we planned Town Square for commercial uses. So think about this for a second. You've got an environment that can hold 3 million square feet. 3 million square feet of commercial uses. But we are now slowly, patiently working our way through and replacing these areas that were on the original plan as commercial that are now on as much lower density traffic generators residential. So Town Square will never have a traffic problem simply because it was designed for an intensity of use that is no longer achievable now that we have the brownstones, the Garden District, and Parkview. This will only make things better. If we develop this site out as we're allowed to under zoning with garden office, strip retail, medical office, it will make traffic worse, not better. If we are instead able to develop this as we're proposing with luxury residences, the type of resident that is living here because they want a walkable environment. They're going to be walking more. They're going to be driving less. And as the research will show, these residents do not have 3, 4, 5 cars. So we're at two cars per unit. We are already above what the industry average, in fact, what the top of the industry allows. So parking for us should not be a problem. Traffic should not be a problem. And for the residents, just so you know, we have 2 separate private structured garages for the residents' private use. They're secured. So we think this will work very, very well.
All right, thank you. As a follow-up question along those lines, talk about what the impact might be on city services, infrastructure, the schools. Give us your thoughts on that.
Well, let me start with the schools. You know, the renter profile for luxury residences are baby boomers, empty nesters, and people who don't have children. As appealing as the downtown residences will be to the older audience that doesn't have kids, they are equally unappealing to families with kids that want a yard, that want closer proximity to schools. So when you look at what that means in terms of kids, look at the average house in Southlake. I think that we call it, I've read it referred to as the yield. So the yield per household is 1.4 kids per household. The yield from the brownstones, which have 5 bedrooms, many of them, is 0.25 kids. That's 1 kid for every 4 homes. The school district has confirmed that we've got, I think, 17 kids. I think some of those, I'm not sure, they may have graduated. They're typically older, not younger kids. But for us, this is a very small number of kids that are going to be living in a project simply because of who we're appealing to. We're appealing to people who don't have kids. But they do pay into the system. Now, a renter does not physically pay the property tax. The building owner pays the property tax. But the property tax from this building is going to generate over $2.5 million to the local economy. That's based on a project cost which is conservatively estimated at $100 million. Of that, $1.4 million will go to the Carroll School District, and it will be shielded from Robin Hood because it's in the town square TIF. Now that's a win-win for our school district. Property tax shielded from Robin Hood, no kids. A few kids. Let me put 1.4 million into perspective, because many of you, like I did, got the email from Riley saying, hey, we want to raise money for 2 teachers. That's $100,000 that we raised for 2 teachers. Let me put that in perspective. That's for 1 year. So now each and every year we need to go out and raise another $100,000 with inflation. $1.4 million shielded from Robin Hood. That is 28 teachers in perpetuity. You want to help the school district? Approve the downtown residences.
Good job.
It's fun. You need to have one at least. The impact from an increased population within Southlake over our planned build-out population is considerable, as we discussed earlier. As far as the city is concerned, additional population will cause more traffic. Additional population will require additional water capacity, sewer capacity. Will require more police and fire personnel. As far as the school is concerned, the main issue would be school capacity. Will there be 17 kids? Will there be 117 kids? I don't know. The magic ball is a little unclear. Demographics are changing. Demographics are changing in Southlake. People are staying longer. People have smaller families. People that are moving in have children of higher age, etc. So we have currently a problem now, today, with capacity in our elementary schools, but it's changing. It's changing. If we keep, not just with this project, but with any future project, looking towards changing the overall build-out density of Southlake, there's going to be an effect. There's going to be a downhill effect. There's going to be an effect on what we need to do with city infrastructure. There's going to be what we need to do with school infrastructure. If we have to add classrooms to a school, if we have to build another school, if we have to put another water tank in, 5 million gallon water tank, which isn't free, all these things come within the community that we all have to pay for as taxpayers with a change to what our original plans were. So, yes, additional development in Town Square will be very helpful to not just the school, but the city. There's no question. The TIF zone, in case you don't know about it, is as Frank said, shielded from recapture or Robin Hood. That is very good for the schools because now they get to keep 100% of every dollar of property tax that's collected within that TIF zone, which is, yes, used to hire more teachers and staff and whatever else. Everything comes with a significant price tag to Southlake residents. So, in fact, it's this. Additional population in Southlake over our planned build-out population has a significant downside and will have a clear domino effect. Darn it.
Okay.
Actually, I'm not trying now.
All right. You both mentioned that the development has been very successful, in fact, even a win-win for all involved. But as the project nears completion, are there other development options for the site? If this is not approved, what happens with the site and the remainder of the property within the development? I guess what can be done to keep Town Square attractive and a regional destination?
This is, and I commented, this is a great question. And I believe the discussion that we really, really need to be having. The development for Town Square has been a win-win for all involved. The developer, the city, the residents, the school district, all involved, the businesses, etc. The sales tax revenue from Town Square are very good, and in fact, paid mostly by our out-of-town visitors. I think it's over 70%. That's pretty darn good. Sales taxes, while they don't affect and fund any school-type financing, they do fund quite a bit of city financing, the city budget. We all want to see Town Square fully developed to its completion. And again, critical words, to its highest and best use of the remaining undeveloped land. However, we want to see it to the original plan of commercial uses that include retail, restaurant, and office. The challenge today brings is that the face of retail is changing. There's no question about it. Currently, about 13 to 15% of all U.S. retail purchases are made online. Get this, $3.7 trillion. Wow. And it's growing. So retail, as we know it, is far from dead. It's far from dead. It's vital, but it is changing. That said, millennial shopping habits and Generation X and Z and Q, P, W, Y, whatever it may be, they're changing as well. So folks, the retail experience must change as well. Already retailers like Nordstrom's have introduced new concepts across the country. It's called a showroom store. We've all stopped by or walked by the Tesla store, I'm sure. Basically, it's a department store with limited or even no inventory where people shop, get entertained, able to touch, feel, and try out merchandise, make a purchase decision, and voila, by the time they arrive home in our land of immediate fulfillment, the item is on their doorstep or located in their garage. While I'm not a developer, I truly believe we must be on the cutting edge of these new retail, entertainment, destination opportunities. What makes Town Square a destination in the future? Is it a food hall? Is it entertainment? Is it this new shopping showroom type environment? I don't have the answers, but I do think they need to be pursued.
Thank you.
Well, at least you're consistent.
Liking that gun.
You know, are there other development options for the site? You really have to look at the site in the context of Town Square. Town Square is 125 acres. We have 650,000 square feet of retail and restaurants. The city agrees that Southlake, not just Town Square, but Southlake has reached a retail saturation point. This is not a site to do retail. I do agree with Al. Nordstrom's got some really interesting concepts. Nordstrom Local, which may be the one that Al's referring to, is 3,000 square feet. They've got a wine bar, coffee bar. You walk in. They don't have any inventory, but it's in California. What they do have is 8 or 9 full-service Nordstrom department stores immediately surrounding it. So literally, you go in, you get fitted. They don't carry any inventory. You're exactly right. But you get fitted, and it can be delivered to your house, or you can go pick it up. All the while working with one of 9 very, very competent professional designers. but that's 3,000 square feet. We have 650,000 square feet. The issue is going to be over time, how do we keep that full and how do we keep Southlake Town Square strong? And it's going to be a challenge. I think we can meet it, but what today's retailers are telling us, if we want to attract a Nordstrom local, if we want to retain good retailers like Apple, they're telling us, we want to be in an environment where there is a strong residential population. It's what their corporate boards want, it's what their shareholders want, it's what their investors are demanding, and if we don't provide it, when that project down the road calls and says, hey, how would you like to be in my project, and they're providing it, at some point we risk losing it. We risk losing our residents because we don't provide them the housing that they want and need, and we risk losing our businesses because we don't provide them the environment that they want.
All right. You both touched on the changing face of retail. Give me your thoughts, or give us your thoughts on, is retail sustainable in the future? Is that part of our development sustainable going forward?
I believe, yes, retail is sustainable. I don't think bricks and mortar are dead, but the internet is a growing presence. But here's what we're learning about retail, and it plays into what I just talked about. Retailers want to be in higher density environment in fewer locations that deliver better experiences. One of the reasons Nordstrom is doing Nordstrom Local is to deliver an experience to the consumer. Brian and I used to say that our job as developers of Southlake Town Square is to deliver a great environment that makes you want to come here. And I agree with Al. We want to be a regional destination. How do we do that? We create an environment where when people have a choice, they choose to come here. Once they get to a retail store, it's the job of the retailer to deliver the experience inside that store. It used to be the retailer focused on just the door inside their own store. Today, the retailer is focused on the entire journey. They know if you don't give them an experiential place, you'll never get to their door in the first place because the internet makes it too easy. So what does that look like in Dallas-Fort Worth? There was a recent study called the Walk-Up, Wake-Up Call. And the Center for Real Estate and Urban Analysis at George Washington University studied DFW, and they saw there are 38 of these walkable districts like Town Square. But here's the kicker. 1/10 of 1% of land area is what these 38 districts represent, but they're generating 12% of DFW's economic output. That's a factor of 120 times. So why are we here? We're here because density done well is how we succeed. Density done well is what makes Southlake Town Square special. Density done well is what will keep us sustainable into the future.
Thank you, Frank. And I agree with a few things that you definitely said there. Believe that or not. Roxanne. Happy birthday, Roxanne. We don't. As we discussed, sustainability must be on the front burner. And as anyone in business knows, there's a clear and critical need to look forward, develop long-range plans for capital expenditures, product development, etc. All businesses have a life cycle: birth, development, growth, peak, and then contraction and decline. It's pretty darn important that before a business heads into a decline cycle, it must reinvent itself. Otherwise face decline and perhaps failure. Remember Sears, the original Amazon? They're gone. Who was the largest online retailer as far as what online retailers would have been known as for the day back when? It was Sears. You could buy a house. Now they're gone. We are probably at the peak point in Town Square without some new life and development being done. So these discussions are critical for the developer as well as for the city and its residents. We want Town Square to be successful. We want Town Square to be vital and alive, and we definitely want to see its success into the far future. While our sales tax revenues were flat for the preceding fiscal year, there were a few good explanations. Apple Store was under remodel, as well as transition of some of the other stores happening as well. From what I've been told, and according to our last city budget, our sales tax revenues have indeed recovered and are in good shape. That all said, we cannot rest on our heels. We must see Town Square develop to completion with the addition of a planned big box retailer or showroom store type environment, as well as what other destination amenities that could be justified and added. Think of it this way. Will people across the region want to visit Town Square and visit 300 or 1,000 apartments? Or do they want to come to Town Square because of additional retail, restaurant, and hopefully entertainment options that keep things moving and keep things vital within the district? The streets roll up in Southlake Town Square at, what, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock? You just see the little things scurrying around. What's going to have people walking around at 9, 10 o'clock? What's going to have people patronizing those stores and those establishments that are in Town Square? Again, I don't have the answer, but destination is what we need to be concentrating on.
Thank you, Al. We're running short on time, but let's go ahead and ask a question or two from the audience. Does anybody, please, Pam, please.
It was over 30 years ago. This gentleman that I'm sitting at the table with, Rick Wellham, and I took our city council together to rewrite the zoning ordinance in the city of Southlake. And as you all know, Rick and I probably don't have the same philosophy about everything, but I think we put together a really good piece of ordinance. In addition, Frank, you remember I was the only council member that was thrilled and excited when
Great question. Interestingly, as far as precedent, the Carillon discussions that are going on today actually relate back to the original Hines application. Hines, who had developed nothing in Southlake, was actually able to get multifamily before we were. They got it back in, 2009, whenever that zoning was approved. Well, there was a little part that was incorporated, and it remained. And so here we are, but from a precedent standpoint, people were worried that if high-density Town Square was approved, that Southlake was going to be littered with high-density development. Didn't happen. People were concerned that if the brownstones got approved, that we'd be littered with brownstones all over Southlake, brownstones, townhomes, you name it. It didn't happen. Precedent can be handled in a number of ways, but the way that we worked with the city back in 2003 was to craft the DT Downtown District zoning ordinance. Little technical fact, we were originally approved as a planned unit development, but that didn't give the city the precedent protection that they wanted, so we worked with the city to codify our planned unit development as Chapter 37 of the zoning ordinance, and that language states that this sort of high-density housing is appropriate in a mixed-use, walkable, urban environment, which is Town Square. The saying Brian liked to use back then was the zoning basically codified what we all know, what happens in Town Square stays in Town Square. So I hear you on the precedent issue, but there can only be so many places that you can deliver this kind of an environment, and as long as it's done well, which is also supported here by the design guidelines that are in place. And by the way, just a quick point on that, House Bill 2439, whatever the bill was that addresses the masonry ordinance, which Al was down in Austin, and thank you very much for your service. But that ordinance now has weakened cities' ability to control the use of masonry products on buildings. In Southlake Town Square under DT Downtown District, because there are design guidelines, the city can override that with that precedent. This block that we're talking about today is Zone C3 General Commercial. Those protections are not in place on this block. We're asking to actually put those handcuffs on. I think that's a good thing for Southlake.
Thanks for mentioning 2439, one of the many bills that I was against. It was bad legislation. Really a question for Frank, so I'll just add on this, that again, Southlake has been carefully planned, and carefully planned to, like you've heard it 10 times now already from me probably, to have a certain build out, a certain population. Any change to that population, it puts us on a slippery slope. And it's a slippery slope that can get quite expensive for all Southlake residents, taxpayers. I'm at a crossroads myself, just as an ad lib scenario. We're about to be empty nesters. We like to stay in Southlake. We don't need our big house. We really don't need our big house, and there's plenty of us that are in the same situation. So what are those options? And it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge. I'm with Frank in Colorado. Maybe we'll be neighbors. It's one of our target destinations. But we don't want to give up Southlake as well. But so in bringing it back around to Pam's question, I don't know what the ultimate solution is over and above what we already have available. I really don't. I do know that the future sales tax revenues that we were counting on for Southlake Town Square to be completed to the way it was originally planned are critical for the city's future, the city's financial future. The additional big box and associated high-end retail, I think, was estimated to more than double, if not 2.5 times the sales tax revenue that we already are collecting in Town Square. That goes a far way to paying for quite a bit of stuff in the city. Apartments, condos, no sales tax revenue. Yes, maybe for what they spend within Town Square and Southlake, but not as far as what they're going to earn. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you. All right, we're approaching 9 o'clock, so let me give each of the speakers 5 minutes to give their closing remarks. Frank, do you want to start us off, please?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for everybody that came this morning. It's certainly been a pleasure to speak to you and to talk about how we think the downtown residences will help our community. They're being designed to attract people like us that want to continue to grow, build, and contribute to the community. And let me just add one thing since we're talking about retail. When we started Southlake Town Square, retailers knew that the demographic profile of their consumer, the core, the meat of that spending power was between the ages of 35 and 55. Well, for any of you that are baby boomers, let me share a fun fact that we've learned on this journey. From the time I was born in 1957, we've been living an average of about 3 months longer every year. That's pretty cool. That trend occurred and continued to about 2015. So what does that mean? I just turned 62. That means for 60 years, I was living longer 3 months each and every year. That means when I turned 60, I really only turned 45, Pam. Right? But the retailers are taking note. And guess what? You know who their new target audience is? People between the ages of 55 and 75. And who's leaving Southlake? People between the ages of 55 and 75. If we want to grow those retail sales taxes, Al, I agree with you. We have got to take care of our residents. We've got to keep our spending power home and not export it to Keller and Colleyville and Grapevine and whoever else wants to accommodate our residents. There's been a lot written on your Facebook page that talks about apartments and uniting citizens against high-density development, and I get it. One of those who posted there voted against the very idea of Town Square back in 1996. And it was over the same issues, uniting citizens against high density. Density is bad, right? Is it? If you don't like Town Square, I'm not going to try to change your mind. But if you do, then you must reflect on what we've talked about today. It's not about density. It's about the very essence of who we are, how we choose what and who constitutes our community, and who and what we want to look like in the future. That's why I'm here today. I want to express certainty about why the downtown residences are necessary for our community and for Town Square, and why it is vital that we protect the tradition of excellence that makes Southlake the envy of all.
Well, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Mark, for moderating. Thanks, Brad Bradley, who was reluctantly absent today. I know he wanted to be here with the Southlake Executive Forum. Thank you, Mike Hutchinson, which I hope has a seat somewhere, for hosting and the great breakfast. But a special thank you to you, Frank, for participating with me in this forum and having this conversation. I'm listening. I'm learning. I hope that vice versa. I'm hoping that we can continue these important discussions. I really do. I'm available to help. I want to help. As we discussed, the build-out population did not for one moment anticipate high-density residential housing. From day one, when Brian introduced the concept of high-density residential in Town Square, it was rejected by the elected officials and residents and was clearly strictly forbidden. As I said earlier, remember, Southlake did not happen by accident. It happened because of so many people, both elected and our residents, that have been involved to establish a plan that has been followed for decades. Now's not the time to steer off our course. We must stand strong, and we must insist that we develop our town square, because we all have a vested interest in this development, in a way that's not only acceptable to our current residents, but also our future residents, and allows Town Square to be successful far into the future. I'm loving hearing about the additional 3 months per year. I think that's wonderful. That's a great one. Thank you very much. I got a great takeaway. I'm going to tell Phyllis when I get home. She's going to go, oh, shucks, darn. But remember, most of our sales tax revenues come from outside of the city of Southlake. Yes, we have a nucleus here. Yes, they are the demographics, I believe, Frank, are changing and are growing older in regards to spendability and target marketing of retailers online and brick and mortar. But I keep on thinking this: what tomorrow brings Town Square continues to bring Town Square to destination status? What's going to bring people here from Trophy Club, from Westlake, from Irving, from Roanoke, wherever it may be, to come into Town Square? And to come into Town Square and go to the movies, go to a restaurant, patronize our retailers, etc. And I think that's a critical element. For any Southlake residents who want to stay informed, Frank alluded that we have a Facebook group. It's Southlake Citizens Opposed to High Density. This is not a beat up Frank's site. It's not a beat up the city site. It's for discussion. And hopefully healthy discussion. Ideas are welcome, and so is conversation. So to make it simple, and for my last words, I'd like to say, the clear majority of Southlake residents have spoken and are speaking clearly. Now, during past elections, and way back when, during the city father and mother's activities of planning out our city, don't urbanize our Southlake. And thinking further on that, and since I think the property owner currently for most of the retail in Southlake is RPAI, a Chicago company, some of us, at least the Texans or adopted Texans in the room, may appreciate it. I know Frank's an adopted Texan as well. Not here as fast as I could. Me too. Thank you. Don't Chicago our Southlake. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Really appreciate your attention and making this a good event.
Thank you, Al. You know, listening to the conversation, yeah, good job, guys. Well done, each of you. Listening to the conversation, I'm reminded of the slogan that the athletes in Carroll have, which is protect the tradition. And so whatever that vision might be for you, I think that's what we're talking about here for Southlake Town Center, is protecting the tradition. So great job. Thank you guys for coming. Appreciate everybody's attention. Rick Wilhelm has asked me to speak for just 2 minutes. He's got a project that he's working on. It's near and dear to his heart. So Rick, please come forward.
Excuse my voice. It doesn't hurt me probably as much as it hurts you. In 2003, with the redistricting, the 24th Congressional District became a safe Republican area. Well, that was proven out in 2012 when Romney won by 22.4% of the voters in the area. In 2016, Trump won with 6.2% of the voters in the area. And in 2018, Beto O'Rourke had 51.3% of the voters in 18. This is a transitional district and has been looked at very hard by both Republican and Democratic candidates. We're going to have, as you know, Kenny Marchant is not running again, and so there are 6 Democratic candidates and 6 Republican and independent candidates, total of 6 independent and Republican candidates running for this seat. We're going to have potentially 2 meetings in January, one on Tuesday, January 7th, and one on Wednesday, January 22nd. The 7th would be the Democratic candidates. The 22nd would be the Republican candidates. This is transitional. You may say, I'm a Republican and I don't care about those Democrats, or vice versa. But you need to know who is running and why you should support the person that you want to win. It may change your mind. We have some interesting people running, PhDs, scientists, a retired colonel female colonel from the Air Force, a lot of school board members who are running, a lot from the Weatherford or Carrollton Farmers Branch. So please watch for your updates from Southlake Executive Forum as to the venue. I mean, we're going to be here, but as to the dates and things like that, so far we're pretty set. But please strongly consider coming to both. I think you will be very enlightened because of these quality people. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate that. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you. Yep.